In a remote part of the world, a man found himself marooned on a deserted island, his only companions being the sun, sand, and sea. For a grueling decade, he was stuck in solitude, left to his own devices. One day, while squinting into the distance, he noticed an unusual, tiny speck breaking the monotony of the horizon. "It surely can't be a ship," he muttered to himself, a glimmer of hope beginning to twinkle in his eyes. As the speck drew closer, it appeared to be too small to be a boat. He observed with keen interest as it continued to approach, eliminating the possibility of it even being a modestly sized raft. Then, much to his utter disbelief, emerging from the foamy surf, appeared a stunningly beautiful blonde woman. She was attired in a form-fitting wetsuit and was equipped with scuba gear, looking like a goddess emerging from the sea. The woman walked up to the man, who was too stunned to react, and asked, "Tell me, how long has it been since you've savored a smoke from a cigarette?" 10 long, smokeless years," replied the awestruck man, still trying to process the surreal scene before him. In response, she reached over and slowly unzipped a waterproof pocket on her left sleeve. From it, she pulled out a pack of cigarettes, still dry and fresh. He took one, lit it, took a prolonged drag, and exhaled, saying, "Oh, this is simply miraculous." Seeing his joy, the woman then asked, "And what about a sip of bourbon? How long has it been?" Shaking, the man answered, "A decade of parched thirst for bourbon." Without missing a beat, she reached over to her right sleeve, unzipped another pocket, and retrieved a flask. He gratefully accepted it, took a hearty swig, and gasped, "Incredible! This is sheer delight." At this point, the woman began to slowly unzip the long zipper running down the front of her wet suit. She cast a seductive glance at the man and asked, with a teasing tone, "And how long has it been since you've indulged in some playful fun?" With tears welling in his eyes, the man fell to his knees, overcome with emotion, and sobbed out, "Dear God, please don't tell me you've got a full set of golf clubs tucked away in there." One sunny day, I was out enjoying a round of golf when I somehow managed to topple over my golf cart. As luck would have it, a highly attractive female golfer, residing in a beautiful villa located right on the golf course, was alerted by the loud noise. Concerned, she called out, "Are you all right over there?" "I'm all right, thank you," I responded, attempting to extract myself from the awkwardly flipped over cart. She kindly offered, "Why don't you take a breather and come up to my villa for a bit? You can rest and recuperate, and I'll lend a hand with your cart later." I couldn't help but notice her silky bathrobe was slightly ajar, revealing an enticing glimpse of her alluring figure. "That's incredibly kind of you," I admitted, "but I have a feeling my wife might not appreciate it." "Ah, don't be such a worrywart," she pushed back gently. She was so gorgeous and overwhelmingly persuasive. I found my resolve weakening. "Well, all right then," I eventually conceded, although, I must stress, my wife really won't be pleased. After downing a couple of cold beers, I expressed my gratitude, saying, "I feel a whole lot better now, but I can't shake the feeling that my wife is going to be quite upset about this. I really should head back now." "Stop being so silly," she said with a playful smile, her robe slipping open a bit further. "Stick around for a little while longer. She won't know a thing." She then asked, "By the way, where is your wife?" I cracked open another beer and replied, "I assume she's probably still under the cart." One day, a woman was strolling down a sandy beach when she happened to stumble upon an unusual object. It was an ancient-looking lamp, the kind you hear about in fairy tales. Intrigued and curious, she picked up the mysterious object and gave it a rub, as the stories always said to do. To her great surprise and astonishment, a genie burst forth in a cloud of smoke. After the initial shock wore off, the woman quickly regained her composure and asked the genie if she was to be granted the traditional 3 wishes. The genie shook his head and replied, "Unfortunately not. Due to the impacts of inflation, relentless downsizing, and the pressures of intense global competition, I can only afford to grant you a single wish." "So, what would you like?" The woman didn't need to think long. She pulled out a world map from her bag and said firmly, "I want peace in the Middle East." She pointed to the map, saying, "Do you see these countries here? I want these nations to cease their hostilities and live in peace." The genie glanced at the map, eyes wide, and exclaimed, "By all the sands of the desert, madam, these peoples have been engaged in conflicts with each other for thousands of years. I'm competent, but not that skilled. It's simply impossible. You'll have to make another wish." The woman pondered for a brief moment and then stated, "Well, in my entire life, I've never been able to find the right man for me. You know, a man who is considerate and fun-loving, enjoys cooking, and willingly helps with the house cleaning. A man who is excellent in bed, gets along well with my family, doesn't obsessively watch sports all the time, and remains faithful. That's my wish, a truly good partner." The genie let out a lengthy sigh, shook his head in disbelief, and said, "Let me see that map again." In a certain town, there exists a factory dedicated to the manufacturing of the much-loved Tickle Me Elmo toys. These charming, delightful toys have a quirky feature. They giggle when you tickle them just below the arms, much to the amusement of children everywhere. Into this world of fun and laughter enters Lena, a newly hired employee. Bright and early at precisely 8 a.m., she reports for her very first day of work at the Tickle Me Elmo factory, eager and ready to contribute to the creation of these delightful toys. The very next day, however, at 8:45 a.m., there's a knock on the door of the personnel manager's office. The foreman bursts into the room, a storm of frustration and ranting about the new hire, Lena. He voices out his complaints loudly and clearly, stating that Lena is incredibly slow in her work, causing a significant bottleneck in the production line. This, he grumbles, is leading to delays in the entire manufacturing process and putting their production schedule at serious risk. Feeling concerned, the personnel manager decides he should observe the situation firsthand to understand the gravity of the situation. So both he and the foreman march down to the bustling factory floor, their faces stern with concern. When they arrive at the scene, they're confronted with a sight that leaves them dumbfounded. The production line is indeed backed up to an alarming extent. Tickle Me Elmo toys are scattered all across the factory floor, and they're really starting to pile up in mountains. At the end of this chaotic line stands Lena, looking somewhat flustered. She's surrounded by an overwhelming amount of Tickle Me Elmos. In her hands, she holds a roll of plush red fabric and an enormous bag full of small marbles. The two men watch in a mix of horror and curiosity as she takes her time to cut a little piece of fabric, wraps it meticulously around two marbles, and then starts to delicately sew this peculiar little package in between Elmo's legs. At this sight, the personnel manager can't hold back his laughter anymore. He bursts into fits of laughter. After several minutes of uncontrollable hysterics, he eventually manages to compose himself and slowly walks over to Lena. Trying his best to maintain a straight face, he says to her, "I'm sorry, but I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding regarding the instructions I gave you yesterday. Your actual job here," he manages to say through fits of suppressed chuckles, "is to give Elmo 2 test tickles.